You're the only one that ever
Somebody-
watches this. right?
Somebody says.
I don't think that'll do it. Well anyways, good morning, folks. It's great, Small Farms Day today in the legislature, and it's good to have you folks with us. Maddie, we see quite often, and then we've got another crew, in the, Lieutenant Governor's office. Well, you've really got a crew over there. So we'll introduce ourselves, and then we'll jump over to Caroline, and she'll introduce her crew, and we'll get introduced, and we'll rock and roll. So, Brian,
Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District.
Irene Runner, the North England Fairfax.
Brian Campion, Bennington County. I'm gonna go see a friend of mine for one moment. Rich Russman, from Whale District.
and Bobby Starr.
Thanks for finding me. No, I-
Orleans County.
I feel.
Caroline, do you want to run around the room, in there and introduce your folks?
Yes, I'm just going to pass it around for a round of introductions with it.
Hello, my name is Shelby Gerard. I'm a rural Vermont staff member and I live in Brookfield. Thanks for taking time for us today.
Hi, I'm Abby Blake and I live in Waterbury.
Hey, I'm Melissa McDonald. I'm a communications intern with Rural Vermont and I live down in Woodstock.
Hi there, my name is Katie. I'm a farmer in Leicester.
Hi, my name is Mercy. I live and work on a dairy farm in Rutland County.
Hey, wait a minute, you missed a couple there. Didn't you miss a?
Say your name.
Yeah, we want to know your name.
Go ahead. Hi, I'm Emmett Leishart. Girl. I have two daughters here as well. Eleanor and Stella are in the back.
Thank you.
Albert Sabatini from Montpelier.
Byron Garcia from North Hero, Vermont.
Molly Wills. I'm a staff person with Rural Vermont and I live in Montpelier.
Tanama, I manage the UVM Hort Farm and Farmer Training Program, and I'm in South Burlington.
I'm Sadie from Grand Isle, and I'm a legislative intern at Rural Vermont.
Hi, my name is Brian Morgan. I farm in Charlotte and live in Moncton.
You might not see me, but I'm Noah. I'm an intern with Rural Vermont. Yeah.
And I'm Phoenix Mitchell, and I'm also an intern with Rural Vermont. And this is my daughter, Ophelia, tagging along.
That's us.
Yeah, thank you very much, folks. Glad to have you with us. I know we're not in the same room. So Maddie, do you want to introduce our guest or?
Well, we can either have folks come up and introduce themselves as they testify, or would you like to go around?
We could do it.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'll be very brief. You all know me. I'm Maddie Kempner. I'm the policy director at the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont, NOFA. I will just mention briefly, since you have our handout in front of you, that NOFA is seeking a base appropriation of $478,500 in the FY25 budget to support our Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share programs. These programs are essential programs that allow limited income Vermonters to buy food from their local farmers that they otherwise would not be able to afford in many cases. They're critical in providing an increased source of revenue for farmers, particularly through CSAs and farmers who sell at farmers markets. And they have a really meaningful impact on food security here in the state. They are also a part of the food security roadmap, which I think you all heard about earlier this session, with the goal of achieving full food security for everyone in Vermont by 2035. This is an actionable step that you all can help us take this session to get closer to that goal. So I will just point that out. I feel really proud to be here advocating for these programs. They're really meaningful. They touch a lot of people in our communities, including our farmers. And so I will just say that for my piece, and then I'm mostly here to just MC and welcome all of our awesome other farmers and community members who are here to testify as part of Small Farm Action Day. Linda, I don't know if you have a different order. I was gonna start us off with Alan.
You can do whatever you want, Molly.
Okay, I'm gonna say this for the benefit of folks in the room. Let's go Alan, Curtis, Stephen, Lila, and Em, if that works for you all. And I will give you the seat, Alan.
Very good.
Thank you very much for having us today.
Yeah.
Good morning, Senator Starr, members of the committee. Thanks so much for considering my comments. For the record, my name is Alan Reitz. I work with the Hanover Co-op Food Stores of Vermont and New Hampshire. And my work totally centers on support for small and mid-scale farms, as well as affordable housing and some other community issues. We can all agree that the repeal of the on-farm processing restrictions will not benefit our food cooperative located in Hartford, Vermont. That doesn't matter. That's not why I came on. I'm here today because H603 offers a practical change to deliver sound benefits to poultry producers across our state, as well as consumers and restaurants. Allowing parted birds to receive equal treatment to sale of whole birds has some of the following benefits. Small business growth and potential is stymied by Vermont's lack of small processing facilities. On-farm processing means increased profit margins, and it allows farms to be nimble and reduce time to market. For consumers, H603 helps Vermont small producers meet consumer preferences for poultry parts as well as ground products rather than full broilers. Senator Starr, you and perhaps others on the committee might be very skilled at parting out a chicken or deboning one, but it is a craft and skill that today's consumers don't tend to want. And even for our lack of butchers in skills, it is a skill indeed. On-farm and farm-to restaurant sales will benefit both producers and restaurateurs. You speak to a chef or the owner of one of Vermont's many restaurants that specialize in local products, and they will confirm that about 45 to 50% of a restaurant's profits comes from its specials menu. We all know we go into a restaurant, what's on the specials board? They'll use commodity products for their staples that they do not want to run out of, but it is their specials products and being able to source local meat that is really where the profit comes from. You speak to a sous chef and they'll say, where do you want to spend your time? It's not on parting out a chicken. It would be something where they have other duties to perform. We also know that having a limited source, consistent source of fresh local meat proteins really impacts their ability to have specials that don't run out by 7:30 when the restaurant stays open for another couple of hours. So finally, what about larger farms already equipped and inspected to do this? They are successfully serving these markets, and certainly independent retailers and food co-ops around the region. And I would say that this balances out the marketplace. I'm happy to submit my comments electronically and answer any questions. Thanks, Chairman. I appreciate your time.
Yes, well, thank you for your time and being with us. Very helpful.
Great, and it's good to see you in person with respect to the Vermont Dairy Commission. I appreciate your work on that, Robert.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have Curtis up next.
Hello.
Good morning, Kurt.
Okay. Approaching the afternoon.
We're pushing it.
We're pushing it. My name's Curtis Mraz. I run Champlain Valley Apiaries, which is based in Middlebury, Vermont, but I live in New Haven, Vermont. My great grandfather started the business in 1931. So we're a fourth generation family owned business. And we run about 1,000 hives typically throughout the Champlain Valley, so all the way up to the Canadian border down to just north of Rutland. I'm here today in support of H706, which is a bill that you may not have seen yet, because it's still in the House. But this bill is a phase-out bill of neonicotinoid pesticides, which are widely used on corn and soybean seeds, prophylactically to control pests. And I didn't have to prepare something written today to speak because unfortunately one of the most common questions I get is how are the bees, Curtis? And the answer I give is the same one I'm going to tell you today, and they're not doing well at all. And it's in large part due to this exposure they're experiencing from neonicotinoid pesticides. When my great-grandfather started the business in 1931, he would see on average less than 10% loss per year in colonies. Now, and 10% was in a bad year for him. Now we are consistently seeing losses of 30, 40, sometimes even higher than 50%. As a beekeeper, it's not economically viable to have a business model that is experiencing 50% loss on an annual basis. It's not morally or value based. It's ethically conflicting. It's challenging as a fourth generation farmer to want to be in this industry, right? To want to see this business through to its second century. Because we're consistently facing an uphill battle with these pesticides. And a story I have, I actually grew up in New Hampshire, but my uncle was running the business prior to me. And so I'd spend my summers here in Vermont in Middlebury, living with my grandparents and working in the bee yards. And my dad worked late days in New Hampshire, so we'd often drive over the mountains into Vermont in the evening. And I remember as a kid when we'd come in, every time we stopped for gas, we'd have to get out and clean the windshield of bugs, right? And I remember in the mornings in Vermont, like the telephone lines would just be lined with birds, and you'd hear the frogs, and it's just something that's gone away. It's disappeared, and it's something that a lot of people have failed to notice. But I'd say as a beekeeper, I'm seeing this happen on the front lines. When corn and soybean bloom, oftentimes the bees go out to forage and they don't come home. So we have drastic drops in our population sizes. The bees are dwindled next to nothing going into the winter, and they don't have enough thermomass to keep themselves alive throughout the winter. So, there's the fact of it's more difficult to keep the bees alive, but we're spending 30-40% more on labor than we've ever had to spend in the past because there are more treatment regimens we need to do. There are more scientific tests we need to do to make sure that the bees are doing okay. And then we need to spend more time cleaning up dead hives than we've ever had to do in the past, which is just like, imagine a dairy farmer walking into their dairy barn and 50% of their cows are dead on the floor. It's like, that is really hard to deal with every year, every spring. And spring has historically been a really joyful, good time for beekeepers. It's when things wake up. It's when the honey starts flowing. And the narrative has really shifted in the last 20 years. And, New York, just in December, passed a bill called the Birds and Bees Act, which is a phase out of these neonicotinoids. Quebec has banned these neonicotinoid pesticides. And so Vermont is kind of kitty corner to, our neighbors, which have taken these steps. And it's time we take a step in tandem with them. This is a phase out. So corn commodity crop producers will have a number of years to transition. The UBM Extension Office hosted a panel with a number of commodity Quebec farmers that was available to Vermont farmers to talk about their experience in the transition. And in large part, they said, we were able to transition within a year or two, no problems to our yields, because oftentimes these neonicotinoids are not coming at a benefit to the crop, and they're actually paying less per bag of seed than they were paying when the seeds were coated. So if anything, it's positively impacting their bottom line. So I'd ask you, to seriously consider this bill when it does come in. And yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening to me.
Yeah, well, glad to have you with us, and I don't know, probably an unfair question, but have you ever visited with the guys from Quebec or Canada to ask them about their yield or Or is it up, down, and it's?
Do you mean beekeepers or corn
Yeah.
and soybean
As
farmers?
far as bees, are they getting healthier?
Yes.
And the corn guys, are they staying about the same with their yields, or not?
Yeah, so as a higher end commercial beekeeper, like we're on the larger scale for Vermont, we have the privilege of being a part of a number of different national beekeeping organizations. And so, and international as well. And so we're close with a number of Quebec beekeepers who have said their losses have consistently gone down since the neonics have been banned. Additionally, the panel that UVM Extension Heather Darby hosted, those farmers were saying there was little to no yield effect with doing away with these pesticides.
Yeah, good. Other questions? Irene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do they even use these neonics in York?
No, they banned them there. They did for a portion of time, but.
Are the diamides affecting the bees? Do we know yet?
The
Change happened soon enough that we have any data.
Yeah, they are much less toxic than the neonicotinoids, but the idea is there's a narrative that, if we do away with neonicotinoids, we're going to have to switch to diamides. The reality is that's not the case, and that's not what they've seen in Quebec. The neonicotinoids are to little to no benefit to the crop. So why are we replacing it with something else, right? If it's just something we can take off the top. These dairy farmers and row croppers are doing so much to improve their soil, like manure injection and tile drains. And it's like, why are we taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back? We're killing the biotics in the soil, These farmers it's destroying the value of their land.
Thank you. New York is phasing out the use of neonicotinoids. Is that going to be soon enough to help people like you if Vermont were on the same schedule? Because I've heard people say, we can wait another 5 or 10 years in Vermont. Let's see how New York goes. My sense is that if we don't start helping the bees as soon as possible, we're not going to have any bees to save in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I think there's a reality that farmers are skeptical, right? And we want to make this work for the people that are using the seed as well. And New York has given a 7-year timeline, which is longer than I'd like to see as a beekeeper. But what we saw in Quebec with a similar timeline is that the actual farmers were able to transition far before the deadline required them to, right? So I think in Vermont, if we were to give a larger buffer, the intent would be, and we have a lot of relationships with on-the-ground farmers, having our apiaries in a number of different locations, is to talk to those farmers and say, hey, now that you have naked seed or seed that's not coated with these pesticides available to you, would you be interested in purchasing it? And I think that's definitely a reality that we can make happen.
Can Vermont farmers now buy seeds from Quebec if they're interested in helping their own bees or your bees?
It's been really difficult to source them in the past. Almost impossible, but with New York that has substantially more, land under corn and soybean production, and Quebec, there will be seeds available. Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else for Chris? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Morning.
Morning.
For the record, I'm Stephen Leslie, along with my wife Carrie Kowal. I co-manage Cedar Mountain Farm and Cobb Hill Sheets at Cobb Hill Co-housing in Heartland, Vermont. Started farming in the Upper Valley in 1996, and we're a very small and diversified farm, and so it's kind of maybe from that perspective that I'm coming to share with you today. And I just want to thank you so much for uplifting the voices of small farmers. So critical to our future resiliency as a state. I'm always so impressed by somebody like Curtis who can just talk off the cuff like that so eloquently and so clearly knows the inside out from where he's going. Being kind of more of a dairy farmer, maybe less gregarious than a beekeeper. I'm kind of introvert, so have to cobble my notes together after chores this morning. But if it didn't make any sense to you, So I've also come before you today to speak to H706, the ban on neonicotinoids. And yeah, I feel like to begin with, someone just needs to rail against the EPA for ever letting these neonicotinoid poisons onto the market over 20 years ago. And then a few years later for claiming that it needed just a little bit dusted on seed to be effective, and how much better that would be for the environment. Farmers are supposed to be able to trust that when chemical and or seed companies offer a product that is proven to be safe in the environment. Neonicotinoids are proven to be our generation's DDT, and the federal government is failing to protect its citizens, human and non-human alike. And so now we need to rely on our ecologically and agriculturally literate state representatives to have a course correction to safeguard human and soil health. Once again, Vermonters are leading the way. I've been trying to stay abreast of this still, and I've listened to the testimonies of pollinator specialist Samantha Alger of UVM, the former provincial agronomist from Quebec, and Dr. Heather Darby. And I guess no one needs to hear from me how bad this stuff is, because those three specialists all laid it out really well. I had assumed that maybe you had heard that testimony too, but I guess that's only been in house so far. But I know you know the folks I'm speaking with, and are probably quite aware of their work.
We've had Heather in, on general issues, but we'll have her in again when we get 706.
Excellent. Yeah, so these three experts all laid it out very well. That these neonics are persistent from 1 to 20 years and water soluble. A nanoparticle is capable of killing 10,000 bees. Toxic levels have been detected downstream in the tissue of amphibians and small birds. And with all due respect to the governor, it seems clear that while more information is always good, more study is not needed to justify implementing this ban. It is important that we consider these specific facts about the harmful effects of neonics within the larger context of the climate and biodiversity crisis. We are in the die-off, the sixth mass extinction, with an estimated 1 million species predicted to be gone by 2050. 70% of all mammals have disappeared since the 1970s. Humans and their domesticated animals now make up 90% of all terrestrial mammalian biomass. Songbirds have declined by 40% in New England, and we are in an insect Armageddon, with regions such as Germany's Black Forest reporting drops in invertebrate populations as high as 75%. We must understand that we're not immune. Maybe for the first time since our early ancestors climbed down out of the trees and ventured onto the African savanna 1 million years ago, as an entire species, we are having to face the imminent possibility of our own extinction. An accelerating crisis demands an accelerated response. In our current predicament, we need to develop farming systems that can restore landscape function and biodiversity, even as we produce food, medicine, fuel, and fiber that we require to build a healthy, safe, relocalized, and resilient farm economy. The House bill amended the timing of the phase out of neonics to match the 2029 target in the New York bill. It goes beyond New York in including turf and golf courses, but unlike New York, it includes a carve-out for orchards. This seems to me like a good example of democracy in action, that we have this compromise between policymakers and producers. Let's be sure to get all the conventional orchardists access to using IPM traps so they can detect pest levels of apple maggots before deciding to spray. I'd also like to address the need for more funding for offering viable alternatives to corn-on-corn production. Farmers and purveyors of treated seeds often speak of a ban as the removal of an important tool from their toolkit. Can we offer our farmers better tools? For example, some LFOs are going into soybeans these days. Would a 2-year rotation of corn and soy help to disrupt root maggot cycles? There's a growing demand in the state for homegrown small grains. What about diversifying to growing wheat in a 3-year rotation with corn and soy, or even a 4-year rotation with alfalfa, a nitrogen fixer mixed in? These rotations could include undersowing of cover crops and reduced till and no-till practices employing roller crimpers to reduce glyphosate use. Can Dr. Darby and her colleagues at UVM be given more resources to conduct these kinds of innovative trials beyond the simple side-by-side trials of treated and untreated seeds? can we foresee voluntary programs developed around improving soil health within the 93,000 acres of silage production system that could be a proven win for farm productivity, enhanced pollinator habitat, increased food resiliency, and increased biodiversity on our farms? As a small, diversified farmer managing 60 acres of ag land according to organic principles, my operation is dependent on domesticated honeybees and wild pollinators for all the invaluable ecosystem services they provide. That's why I'm asking you to vote yes on H706, supporting a ban on neonics.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Questions from the committee? I think we've had a little testimony and, from somebody, they were mentioning that, is it Dynamate or the anti-bug killer, that could be used, and I'm wondering, do you know anything about that product?
Well, I think Curtis spoke to that pretty well, in that it's really, it doesn't seem that the root maggot issue is really being effectively addressed with either of the two agents. At this point, I think it's really more a situation where the purveyors of the seeds and the chemicals put this on the market without giving the farmers a choice, and as a prophylactic, and this really hasn't panned out to be effective.
Yeah. Any questions from? Thank you, Steve.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
So, when
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm a little nervous.
well, you don't need to be.
My name is Lila Krugman. I am a recent UVM grad who now works for Acorn, the nonprofit in Middlebury. I live in Burlington. Today, I'd like to ask you to support NOFA's request for $478,500 to support local food access programs that enhance food security and promote farm viability. I'm speaking on behalf of Acorn's Pharmacy Program, which is a 3 CSA program for 100 families in Addison County. The families are referred by Porter Medical Center after they have experienced food insecurity or diet-related chronic illness. Going into our 6th year of the program, it has been a real bright spot, both in our organization and in our community. We buy from 3 organic farms in Addison County. This equates to 14,000 pounds or $48,000 of local purchasing every summer. Our program does what it does really well. Our surveys demonstrate the success, with 85% of participants reporting increased fruit and vegetable intake, and almost 80% reporting an increased confidence in their cooking abilities. Our interviews also demonstrate that the program increases social cohesion and connection, reduces the cost burden of purchasing fresh fruits and vegetables, and produces feelings of joy and excitement in participants for cooking. Addison County is the breadbasket of Vermont. We have over 250 farmers and food producers, yet 73% of our participants struggle to access fresh local food because of the cost. Involvement in your local farming community should be a given. Our program allows Addison County residents participation in the vibrant farming community that surrounds them. This year, our program did not receive the grant funding it was expecting that would have funded our program in its entirety. Now we are in a $25,000 deficit, trying to piece together funding to allow all 100 of our families their share this year. Our 2-person team is spending a lot of time filling out corporate grant applications and piecing together our funding share by share. This time should have been used to improve, adjust, and expand our program instead. We're just trying to reach our goal and make sure that we don't have to shorten our already small season or drop any families from our program. Please support NOFA's request for $478,500 to support local food access programs that enhance food security and farm viability, like Acorn's Pharmacy Program. Nonprofits in Vermont are the frontline workers of the national poverty crisis. Please ensure that we can continue to support our families that rely on our services now and in the future. And I'd just like to leave you with a quote from one of our participants last season. She said, "We had more and better quality vegetables than we would have otherwise had. That led to more imaginative meals, and we felt cared for and enjoyed the weekly connection. Using food that was from local farmers was a gift to us. It was special." Thank you so much for listening.
That's great.
Well, thank you. You did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, you're getting ready to come back next year and the year after. Yeah.
Maybe so. Thank y'all.
Well, you don't want to run too fast. There may be some questions. You're good, Irene?
Thank you. So just, so where are you located again? Addison County?
Addison County.
Okay, yeah, I've heard great things about this, about Acorn and the prescription, really, right? That doctors can write and people get food and all that. Yeah, terrific. Thank you very much.
Can I just chime in with one point here, which is that our budget request specifically includes funding for the healthcare shares program, including Acorn's pharmacy program. So you know the
Well,
connection there.
thank you. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done.
Am I ever escaping it?
You're good.
Hi.
Right.
Thanks for taking the time to hear from us all today.
Yeah.
My name is Emily Bernsey. I own Union Brook Farm, and you guys heard from my wife a couple of days ago, Rose Thackeray,
Oh, yeah.
in support of H603. So I'm here today to again reiterate that I hope that you all vote yes on H603, but I also wanted to touch base on the right to repair, H81. We run a small diversified farm, and for us, that the right to repair is essential for us being able to maintain our own equipment. We don't have any employees on our farm, we're very small, and currently I own a tractor and multiple chainsaws that I maintain myself. I had to make sure that I bought a tractor that was of a certain age, 2012, to make sure that I would be able to repair it. And currently I do a lot of logging for our firewood and for other projects that we're building. And I also am not able to purchase a new chainsaw because new chainsaws are manufactured in a way that I can't adjust the carburetor season to season. So it would require me to take my saws into a small mechanic repair shop that's Husqvarna certified, because I prefer Husqvarna, to make sure that they can then adjust the carburetor. This is a simple adjustment that should not require me having to take my saw to a shop. It eats into my bottom line and it prevents me from being able to do the things I need to do on a day-to-day basis. John Deere had an amazing program in the pandemic that allowed for 0% financing and 0 down. So I knew a number of young farmers who ended up buying brand new John Deere tractors because they didn't have the capital to buy a used tractor the way that I did. And now 3 years later, they're needing to make adjustments. You know, haying season this past year was a really tough season for those of us who are making hay. And if your tractor breaks down in the middle of your window for weather and you have to take it to the dealership and you don't have a trailer, you don't have a truck large enough, like it can really impact the season and it can bump down the line. Now, I personally don't make hay for our farm. We don't have the land base for that. But I did see the effects of that because I had a really difficult time sourcing my hay this year for my animals. And that was because A, the season was really difficult, but B, the farmer who I buy my hay from was one of those farmers who bought a new John Deere and his tractor broke down in the middle of the hay window. And so we were directly affected by the inability for him to repair his tractor. And so I would like you to please consider voting yes on H81, the right to repair. And the last thing I want to touch on today is the NOFA funding of $478,500. I run a small farm and we saw the benefits of that program directly after the flood. The funding was all boosted and not only was it open, the products that people were allowed to purchase were opened up and we saw a direct result of that in our sales. I think that our customer base was expanded because of the expansion of the program. We saw people who don't usually buy from us that we see every week at farmers market and usually just wave. You know, we sell eggs and meat, both pasture and forest raised, and that is one of the more expensive items at the farmers market. You know, our pork sausage is $15 a pound. So that's not something that is going to be viable for every family. Now, as soon as that NOFA funding was expanded, we saw families that are always getting their vegetables at the market start to bring those crop cash dollars to our farm directly, and we saw a bump in sales directly as a result of that increased funding. And so just as somebody who's running a small farm and we're running this, we saw the direct impact on that, and NOFA, everything that they do is so important for our state, from the top to the bottom, and I just want to advocate for them to receive the funding that they need because they're such an important institution here in the state of Vermont and across New England. So those are the 3 very brief things. I didn't want to take up a lot of time today. I just want to thank you all for the good work that you're doing. I know that there's a slew of bills that mean a lot for everyone going forward, and I really appreciate your work and dedication to all of them. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yeah, other questions from the committee?
I just want to pursue that right to repair question a little bit.
Sure.
You mentioned your chainsaws.
Yes.
You can repair them or you can't right now?
I can repair the chainsaws that I purchased because I Craigslist old chainsaws.
Okay.
But then if I wanted to go out and buy a new chainsaw this past year, and I was asking questions about the carburetor situation, and they were like, oh, no, the new saws you have to take to the shop. You can't adjust the carburetor. And those certified Husqvarna dealers won't sell you the tool to then make those repairs
Even
either.
with the MOUs that we have in play now, why is that? Do we know? Is it because there is an age? Would this bill change anything?
I think that this bill would have a direct impact because it would make it so that the company needs to sell the tool to me, the user, whereas right now they're unwilling to do so. And so I think that just like addressing it to make sure that folks are able to repair their equipment is really important for especially the smaller farms and the larger farms too, going forward. Thank you.
Other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Do we have time for one more?
Sure.
Kate was interested in speaking.
Yep. Is there anyone in the other room that wants to speak?
They didn't want to, no, those folks didn't want to testify. They just wanted to, they came and learned, and we did a little bit of like training and orientation to the process with folks this morning.
Sure.
But thank you. But Kate, if you want to come up and say,
Hi.
give you a little time.
I wasn't planning on saying anything, but when the NOFA issue came up, I wanted to address that. My name is Kate Lofton. I'm a beekeeper as well, so I'm also really interested in 706 and urge you to consider the facts there and support that bill. I work for Mike Palmer. We just celebrated his 50 years of beekeeping at French Hill Apiaries in St. Albans. He's also very concerned about this issue and has seen a lot of the same things that Curtis was mentioning. One of the honey baked bee surveys, there were a couple in the past years in Vermont, showed 85% of losses in bees in that survey from 2021. There are a couple of surveys out there, but just to like sort of express the direness of the situation that we're facing as beekeepers, which you guys spoke so well to. So thank you so much. I run my own small apiary as well, and the NOFA Crop Shares program has directly not only impacted my customers at the Old Natural Market and Farmers Market in Burlington, where so many people are able to purchase so much more healthy food that, as you mentioned, brings a lot of beauty and joy into their lives, as well as key fresh vegetables. It really has a huge impact on people's lives, and it had a huge impact, like you were saying, on my income directly this year as well. So I'm just putting in, I didn't realize you were going to speak to that as well. I just wanted, as a small farmer, I wanted to put in that not only is it super important for low income consumers, but it's also important for low income farmers as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good to meet you. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you're seeing other pests. Do you think other pesticides are affecting bees, or is it strictly the Unix when you worry about? Because I know there's all kinds of pesticides out there that we seem to be ignoring with the current legislation that's in play.
I think that that's a complicated issue for me to speak directly to, but everything is so interdependent in the systems that we're talking about, that we're talking about water being contaminated, we're talking about water moving to fields that have never been planted in corn or soy with neonate treated seeds, and there's now neonics in the pollen in those plants. All the pesticides are moving through the water and the soil in the same way and having these kinds of impacts. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have others?
It was great.
I think that was everybody who planned to testify.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well.
Thank you
it
very
was
much for
great
having us.
You with us and appreciate your time and your thoughts. A lot of times the thought that goes into what you're gonna say takes more time than saying. And so thank you very much for giving us that time and testimony. And have a good rest of your day. Was
Thank
that
you. Thank you very
your
much.
meeting with Lieutenant Governor or?
We actually haven't even met with him. He's just
Oh, you
kind enough
did?
to let us use his space and,
Oh,
yeah, it's very gracious.
he didn't have enough time for you?
Not yet. We're hoping he'll pop in on it. I just want to say too, I'm happy to come back and speak to the food access programs anytime. You'll
Thank you
learn
very
more about them. Did a very quick, comment at the top, but if you want to know how they work a little bit and more detail.
We're gonna need some help in a different room. Getting that.
Happy to do that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go to any room you want me to be in.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, so.
There's no one on the screen, right?
Thank you so much.
I also, Senator Carter, just want to say thanks again for you guys taking the time to hear the Capital City Farmers Market speak for 133 and getting involved in that process.
That's working out.
The communication has been correct ever since we spoke with you all, and it's been a big on our end. That's fine.